It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. The Inside the Birds guys had their mock draft on Monday, in the latest version. Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, and this man, Andrew DiCecco, who joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline to take a look at the mock draft, your questions, and the NFL draft, which is on Thursday. And you can hear all the draft coverage starting Thursday at 7 on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, what's going on, man?
Hey, Mike, doing well. Just a couple days out from the draft, so, I mean, a lot going on.
We are down to the final hours, I guess you could say, for the NFL draft. And you guys did your mock draft, which we want to get into as well. We have questions from our listeners who want you to answer questions about them. I want to get into a couple quick things. When it comes to the two wide receivers, Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle, because I guess one or both of those guys could be there at number 12. Something Nick Sirianni said last week kind of sticks out to me, and I should have brought this up earlier as we've been talking, but he mentioned like that X receivers come in all shapes and sizes, and that he's had T.Y. Hilton and his guys. Which of the two, Smith or Waddle, do you think fit the X receiver explanation that he gave more?
I would say Waddle, just from an athletic profile standpoint. I mean, I think Smith can do it, but I also do believe that his size is really going to be a factor. I think he can do it in spurts, but I don't think he can do it. He can play that role consistently. Now, there are ways you can scheme those guys open, as you've seen in the past, but I mean, when I envision an X receiver, I envision someone more along the lines of a Terrace Marshall or what they thought they were getting in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You need someone to kind of fill that Alshon role, and I don't know that those guys quite fit the bill.
So if Smith, Waddle, or Horn are on the board and they need an X receiver, that would be more likely than they go with Horn, because you're saying neither one of those guys fits what he kind of said the criteria for an X receiver might be.
Yeah, I mean, and I also, in my opinion, would think that J.C. Horn, you'd be getting the top corner in the draft at 12, which I think is fantastic value. This is a rich receiver draft, much like it is a very deep cornerback draft. But I mean, you can get the cream of the crop at 12. And you can also get, a starting caliber player at 37, 70, and so on. So, I mean, I think that value would be, too good to pass up.
All right, get some questions on this as we're talking wide receivers. Frank wants to know, Andrew, would you be happy with Terrace Marshall or Rashad Bateman in round 2? Also, your thoughts on Elijah Moore, the wideout from Mississippi.
Well, I mean, Eagles fans should be pleased if they land a Bateman or a Marshall at 37, because both players are going to be they offer starter upside, which you would expect at the top of round 2. But I also do believe that they would add another dimension to the Eagles offense, which they don't currently have, as far as a red zone perimeter receiver that can go up and get the football, build that rapport with Jalen Hurts, and become, a force in the red zone. And I mean, when you're looking at that, I think both players really embody that. And I think someone who's emerging late here is Terrace Marshall. So, I mean, there's a chance that he sneaks into the first round. It all depends on what teams like, because going into the pre-draft process, Bateman was the guy that was billed over him. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Here's an interesting scenario here that Jalen brings up. He says, I think it would be a steal if the Eagles get Horn and Farley, knowing injury history is much different than Sidney Jones. But if he hits, Eagles corners could be incredible for 5 years. Is that worth the risk? And I guess the question would be, where do you kind of envision Caleb Farley going? I mean, if you You guys did your mock draft. Where do you see Farley landing, or is it possible that the Eagles, see him slipping and get back into that Caleb Farley game?
Yeah, this is something that we discussed. We touched on a little bit in our mock draft, and I kind of see him going at the end of the first. I don't know that he tumbles out of the first entirely, but I mean, it's going to be interesting that the Tampa Bay Bucks sitting there at the end when their window, they might want to maximize their window. They can go with a running back, like a luxury pick, like a Travis Etienne, or they could also go and add to their defensive group and add a corner, which would be fantastic value in Caleb Farley. That's a team that I could see him going to because, yeah, he might not be ready to go right away, but they also have a decent amount of corners there. But I think that would be a luxury pick there. I don't know if he's a guy that's a second contract guy, which is something that Adam brought up. I mean, we don't know that. I mean, the injury history is there, but I think that you can get a lot of mileage out of him, so to speak, in that first contract. I think he's going to be a good player. I just don't know if he's going to be around for a long time.
Andrew DiCecco, football at 4. All right, so we got a lot of questions kind of pouring in here. Elliot wants to know, Andrew, who do you see starting in the slot this year? If we move Rager to the slot, who do you start alongside him? That's an interesting one because Greg Ward has handled that position the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, right now it's going to have to be. I mean, if you put Rager in the slot, you have to identify an X receiver. I mean, they simply don't have that. You can't go into the season thinking that Travis Fulgham and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside are going to fill those roles. And do I think that Travis Fulgham should be completely written out of the offense? No, not at all. That 4-game sample size, that just doesn't happen by accident. He's an NFL player. I just don't know if he's a starting caliber receiver, so you can't go into the season thinking that. So you have to identify an X receiver. And it's certainly, if Rager moves to the slot, I mean, I don't know what you do with Greg Ward because he can't play on the outside.
Yeah, Ward's seemingly a slot guy, and you say Rager, if they move him inside, you're right. I mean, my question for you, Andrew, off of that is, like, do you think that Sirianni can get something from J.J. Arcega-Whiteside?
Well, and I mean,
like, have you written Arcega-Whiteside off as a bust, or hey, there's a new coach who's got a wide receiver background? Like, is there something in him that Peterson and his staff couldn't get out?
I mean, personally, I don't think he can play. I wasn't very high on him coming out of the draft. I didn't think he ran really well. I don't think he was really challenged. So you didn't really get to see what he could do if he was facing a physical corner. He dominated those Pac-12 corners. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that he deserves another look. I mean, they invested a second-round pick. They didn't, but I mean, the Eagles did. And, you have the wide receivers coaching, pedigree there with Sirianni, Patullo, and Aaron Moorhead. So let's see what he can do with this summer with Aaron Moorhead, another year with Aaron Moorhead, and see if you can get something out of him. I just don't see it.
Right. Now, he was drafted to replace – he was billed as the replacement to Jeffrey. Has he ever got the chance to fulfill that role, or have they been using him in the wrong – in other words – Nelson Aguilar wasn't awful when he played the slot. He had problems when they moved him all over the place. But in 2017, when he was strictly a slot man, is when he excelled. Could Arcega-Whiteside perform if used in the right manner? He was billed as the replacement for Alshon.
Well, I also think he needs to show on the practice field and in the meeting room that he deserves to be out there. There's another layer to this that we're not exactly privy to, and I think that a lot of these limited opportunities that he's getting is, it's taking place on the practice field, and more so what they're not seeing out of him, the details of the route running, just the ability to go up and come up with those contested catches, which that was supposed to be his calling card coming out of Stanford. And when you're getting taken out, you're not even involved in, red zone situations and jump ball situations. You're on the sideline. Well, that's what you were drafted to do. And instead you have guys like Greg Ward that are in on those situations. That's very telling to me. And I mean, maybe they can get something out of him. They can get him to play above the rim, so to speak. But I mean, after 2 seasons, I don't know that I've seen anything that warrants me being encouraged by what I've seen.
All right, another question for Andrew. Andrew, if the Eagles trade back, which this gentleman says is starting to feel more likely, who is a player they may draft that no one is talking about?
Well, I mean, I think if they trade back, I think someone like a Kwity Paye would certainly be in play here. But I mean, he's been talked about. I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, they could also trade back and get a guy like Greg Newsome, the corner who I actually had mocked going to the Arizona Cardinals at 16. He's going to go anywhere from that 15 to 20 range, I would say, and he'd be a guy that no one's really talking about, but he's in that next tier of corners that he's got that length and size that Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon have experience being around with the Indianapolis Colts. So, I mean, he would kind of slot right in there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because everyone's talking about Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, and J.C. Horn. Who's the next group of guys? So if they don't take one at 12 or if they trade back, who are some of the other corners? You just mentioned Newsome. Who are some of the other corners that you have your eye on?
Greg Newsome, Asante Samuel Jr., Eric Stokes. That's sort of that next tier for me. Tyson Campbell is right there as well. I don't think he's as technically sound as Eric Stokes. They're talking about the other Georgia corner, of course. I do think he has a high upside. So, I mean, those are the guys that are going to, trickle. They kind of file in after the premier guys.
All right. If they pass on, they have a first pick, which is 12, second pick, 37. If they wait it to round 3, advisable?
For a corner?
Yes.
I would probably. I mean, there's a little bit of a drop off there in talent. I mean, I think that I would take advantage of the picks that you have and really get this right and not try to. Don't bank on the fact that this is a deep draft class and then you get a little too complacent and all of a sudden you miss out on this top end talent. I think that they need to capitalize when they have the opportunity, and they have a golden opportunity in all likelihood at 12 and certainly at 37.
Yeah. So you're saying if you want a corner, you need to get one in the first 2 rounds. That's the way to go.
Yeah, because in the Eagles situation, they don't have that opportunity to take a guy and let him sit on the sideline. They have holes everywhere, especially at corner. Opposite Darius Slay, the group that they have to work with is abysmal. So you need to get a plug and play guy there and really start to rectify the defensive backfield.
Yep. If I said yesterday, I want to get your opinion on this, Andrew. They're at 12. If they were to move up, there has been some talk that the guy they would move up for is Pitts. Is there a guy that you would say, if they're going to move up, this is who it has to be for?
I would say Pitts or even a Jamar Chase. Yeah. I think that Jamar Chase can be that good. You heard Jeff Mosher on the Monday podcast. He spoke about Jamar Chase and his upside, and I tend to agree there. I mean, those are those two blue chip players that you're going to move up for. They're going to be difference makers on your offense. They offer big playability and can completely transform that. Those are the two guys that you're going to make a move for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree there. That if they were to move up for somebody, Pitts would be number 1 on my list. I feel like this offense and just his style and what he brings to the league is going to be very intriguing. I would take a shot if I were to move up. Not that I wouldn't on Chase, but wide receivers tend to have a little bit more bust factor, I guess. No?
Yeah. And the fact that he's not just a tight end, he's the ultimate weapon, I would say. And you could use him at receiver. You can use him at tight end. You could really do anything you want with him. He's that athletic, and he has that ability to work all 3 levels of the field and create mismatches no matter where he goes. I mean, how do you cover the guy? He's going to be too physical for safeties, too fast for corners, and he's just and too fast for linebackers. I mean, he really is the ultimate weapon. So he's the guy. I agree with you there. He'd be the guy that I would move up for if the Eagles choose to go that route.
Yeah. All right. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. If you have a question for Andrew, there's a lot of questions that we still haven't gotten to here. Here's one from Jeff. He wants to know Jalen Phillips, thoughts on getting him in that first round. Now, would you say trade back in that situation if Phillips, or would you take him at 12?
Yep. He would be another trade back candidate. And when you talk about the pass rushers in this class, this is a great question, by the way. There isn't a bona fide top guy. it all depends on who you like, because I've seen Kwity Paye. I mean, early in the draft process, Gregory Rousseau was considered the top guy, the surefire first one to come off the board. And then there's also Jason Elway from Penn State, who Greg Cosell loves. I really like his athleticism and his bend. And then you got Jalen Phillips, who, had it not been for all these concussions and medical red flags, he's a guy that's going to probably, you can make a case that he would be the first defensive end off the board. But again, can you afford to roll the dice and take a gamble on a player with this kind of with these medical red flags? I don't think you can. I mean, you could trade back for him and everything, but I mean, is he going to be a second contract player? These are what you have to kind of weigh. These are the factors you have to weigh when you're taking this kind of a gamble.
All right, this one is from Jeff. He says, Jeff, give me a couple linebackers that you would like to see them target at 37.
At 37, I would say Baron Browning. Nick Bolton would be another guy that would fit. He's not necessarily doesn't have the length or anything like that, but I do think that he has the coverage acumen, which is what you really need to succeed at the next level at the linebacker position. I also like Jabril Cox from LSU. Again, I think 37, as I said on your show last week, I think 37 is a little early for Jabril Cox. He'd be a trade back scenario type of player. He's going to go anywhere from between 37 and 70, right around that 50 range, I would say would be a good spot for him. So those are just a few guys that I think are going to be difference makers right out of the gate.
Getting Eric Wilson, does that lessen the necessity for a linebacker in round 2? Or I mean, I know Wilson's just a one-year guy. Alex Singleton is still here. TJ Edwards is still here. But signing Wilson, does that say, you know what, maybe we can get a linebacker in round 3 now?
I think that would be a mistake if they think that way. And so I don't necessarily think that impacts it one way or the other, Mike. And the reason being is the Eagles have gotten by with these Band-Aids or free agent signings, whether it was Nigel Bradham, LJ Ford, and now Eric Wilson. I mean, they need to draft. They need to identify a homegrown talent that they can grow with. They thought it was going to be Nathan Gary. They still think it's going to be Davion Taylor. I still have my doubts about that. But again, just like with corner, you have to, if you have the opportunity to add a difference maker there, and they're going to at 37, you got to do it. I mean, you have to add some building blocks on defense, and that'd be a great place to start with adding a Baron Browning or something, a player of that mold. So that's the way I would go.
I know that everybody is like if Micah Parsons was at 12, which I don't think he would be, but would he be in play?
I think that he would have to be. And like you and I talked about, Mike, I think that it's not necessarily fair to say that the Eagles aren't going to value the linebacker position, because that was the previous regime. This is an entirely new thought process, a whole new creative group here that, who knows, Jonathan Gannon may say, hey, look, this is the type of player that I need to run my defense. Yeah. And he's a guy that I think is going to be an all-pro player and a difference maker. You have to bring those. You have to swing the bat on a player like that. Right. He has freakish athleticism, and he's going to have a long career and be one of the top defensive players that come out of this draft.
That might be, Andrew, the most pick. If the Eagles pick Parsons at 12, if he's there, that especially, I mean, if they trade it up to get him too. I mean, if they say, look, we think the Giants might take him, we're going to go up to 9 to go get him. I don't see that happening. But if they took a linebacker, Micah Parsons at 12, that might be the biggest scenario.
Oh, absolutely. And, I kind of equate Micah Parsons to he's the defensive version of Kyle Pitts. And that, when you're drafting him, I mean, the linebacker position in itself isn't as flashy as some of the other ways that they could go, but you look at all the things that he can do and the value that he can provide. I mean, that's going to pay immediate dividends.
All right, we will look at your mock draft from Monday's Inside the Birds when you're back on Thursday. We'll kind of run through that and then see how it matches up with Thursday's draft. And, of course, Andrew DiCecco back on Thursday for a draft preview, the final one before the pick is made, and we'll get Andrew's selection, who he thinks the Eagles will go with on Thursday's show. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Andrew DiCecco, everybody, at A DiCecco NFL. Andrew, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to talking to you on Thursday.
Yeah, that should be good. We'll go through that mock draft on Thursday, see what he thinks, and see what he thinks happens. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.